something that probably all of you have been wondering. Tom would have been absolutely elated or loved the fact that we're all gathered here today for him. He would have eaten that up. Not in somber tones, but the fact that we're wearing sports attire, we're doing whatever, it would have been fun for him. But the only thing that popped into my mind was he would look at me and he would have said, who in the world would ever schedule a funeral to happen during college football games? How I came to know Tom was it's quite a long process. It started out Little League baseball. I played Little League. Tom was one of the Little League coaches. Of course, through All-Star baseball, those type of things, we were able to, it was more of a mentorship type thing. But I always knew who he was. And of course, he was a police officer for the city of Uricksville. Later on in life, as I became older, I started as an auxiliary police officer at the city of Uricksville, and of course Tom was still working there, so we kind of reconnected at that point in time, and we talked about things like baseball and growing up and those things. So we kind of developed a professional relationship, let's call it. It wasn't necessarily the most serious type, but we always had something to talk about. And then of course I left to go away to school, and as I came back and I married my wife and we started attending church here, Tom and Pat then started attending church here. So over a period of time, he kind of intertwined in my life a number of different times. But it was the last time where I really got to know Tom. And I got to know him more as a friend than anything. Tom was the most incredible friend that you could ever want. He would bend over backwards for those that he really cared about. And I consider myself very lucky to be one of those, to be part of his life. And let's face it, Tom was pretty choosy when it came to friendships and things that he did. And looking around here, I'm kind of surprised that some of you did make the cut. Tom could be remembered for a number of things, but for me, I want to talk about something that I would call the polar opposites of Tom Wells, the yin and the yang of his life, so to speak. And I just want to touch on a few things. The first one was, did you know that Tom was bilingual? Did you know that he could speak a different language? Because he could. He would have times, as we're watching more or less baseball games, he would have a hard time conveying a thought in simple English. But when it came to pronouncing the names of any baseball player, especially if they were from Latin America, he could rattle off their names with such pronunciation and correctness that it would make a Spanish teacher beam with pride. He could get the names like Enyel de los Santos, Ronaldo Lopez, Andres Jimenez, and of course Jose Ramirez. And he would get that R just rolling off of his tongue. The second thing is he was a numbers and technology savant. He could do anything when it came to numbers, as far as averages, things along those lines. More than once, he would call on me to come over and help him with his computer. It wasn't working correctly, only to find out that it was because his internet was down for some reason, or it was just unplugged. But as soon as he'd get the computer going for him, he could sit in front of that same computer. He could manage multiple fantasy teams, know everybody's name, everybody's averages. He could tell you who's doing what, when, where, why, and how many points they were scoring, and how many he needed to win that given day. He could tell you things like RBI, runs batted in. He could tell you how many steals, how many the team standings were. He could regurgitate them with great precision. But if you ask him where the TV remote was, he had no idea. The last thing is, did you know that Tom died once before? He was an avid supporter of our church and our church sports teams. And over the years, he played on our church golf league. He would attend our church softball games. And of course, the one particular time I'm referring to was at a softball game over at Dover Park. And Tom decided to park his lawn chair a little too close to first base. And during warm-ups, our third baseman, who had an arm like a gun, threw the ball over to the first baseman. The first baseman missed the ball. It bounced off the ground, smacked Tom square in the forehead, laid him out flat. We thought he was dead. I'm not kidding you. I've never seen anybody drop like that. Gravity was working that day because he just was on the ground. As a matter of fact, I joked about it later on. I said it looked like Goliath after David dropped him with a stone. I mean, that was... Anyhow, we rush over to him. He's laying there, and I thought, like I said, I thought he was dead. He looks around and he says, "If you didn't want me to come to the game, all you have to do is tell me." Well, of course, we knew at that point in time he was going to be okay. He had a nice big welt on his head, but anyhow, it wasn't long after that, during the work weekend that we had at our church, we were in Kentucky. Tom didn't make that trip, but Pat did, and we were all talking about it, and of course, at this point in time, it was funny. And given Tom's ability to make up funny songs about things, we decided it was time to make up a song about Tom. And if you remember the song, "Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do you remember me?" We were singing that, but it was Tom Hills. Tom Wells got hit in the head, dropped to the ground. We thought he was dead. I can't think about that anymore and not think about Tom and smiling. I mean, that will always, forever be a memory etched in my mind. And even as his health issues became more prevalent, Tom, one day, given my profession, he asked that I come to his home because he wanted to make sure everything was taken care of. Not necessarily for his peace of mind of knowing his wishes were going to be carried out. He wanted me to make sure that things were taken care of for Pat, for his children. He wanted to make sure that there was no burden left for them. So, of course, I sat there and Tom and I talked about a number of things. But he always kept his sense of humor. We joked about things like having a will that would require his family to have a massive game of rock, paper, scissors, and of course, whoever won would be the one that gets everything. He actually didn't do it, but the fact that he considered it actually tells you a lot about Tom. In conclusion, as we reflect about Tom, I just want us to remember him for the man that he truly was. He was a man, in my opinion, that could bring joy and laughter into the lives of everyone around him. Tom, you may have left us, but your incredible spirit will stay with me, if not all of us, forever. Thank you.